Luxury retailer Saks Global, the parent company of Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, and Bergdorf, announced that it was filing for bankruptcy. And as part of that, the CEO of the company, Mark Metrick, resigned from his role. The company has been awash in debt the last couple of years since it acquired Neiman back in 2024. So, how do legacy companies like this recover and rebuild themselves? Pleasure to be joined by Barbara Kahn, professor of marketing here at the Wharton School, and also co host of the Marketing Matters podcast on the Wharton Podcast Network. Barbara, great to talk to you. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
Well, I guess let's get your thoughts on the bankruptcy itself in the first place and just what happened with this company.
Well, there's a few things that were unique to Saks, and there's a few things that were unique to the luxury industry and department stores in general. Unique to Saks, when Hudson Bay took over Saks a while ago, the first thing they did, which a lot of industry experts thought was a bad idea, was they separated out their online and their physical store. And a lot of people know retail now is omni-channel. So that was kind of an interesting thing, that a play that was made for financial reasons, not for what's best for retail. Now, I think in 2024, they reunited it when they did that Neiman acquisition, but that wasn't a good instinct. And then, the other thing is recently they've had some, like you mentioned, they had some debt issues and they acquired Neiman, and that was supposed to make things better, but it didn't make things better. They had trouble paying out their bills to suppliers, which made suppliers not want to give them more inventory, which is
Yeah.
not good for a department store. Then they made some funny tactical decisions, like in the flagship New York City store. They took their beauty department, which is always on the main floor of a department store because it encourages traffic to come in and it's big for impulse purchases,
Right.
and then put it upstairs on the second floor. Now they did a beautiful job with it, but having that department on the second floor doesn't really seem so smart to me. So
See,
there were just like a lot of little things and then some bigger things, and they just kept not doing things right, I think.
so on the surface, when the Neiman deal comes down, was it thought to be a good deal, or was there kind of trouble? Was there leaks in the boat as soon as this deal started to occur?
I think it was supposed to be a good deal. There were supposed to be synergies. They were going to be the preeminent luxury company, et cetera. But instead of making things better, it did make the debt issues and make money issues worse. And then it just kept getting worse. And like I said, it wasn't just Saks. They did some things right. I'm actually a big fan of Mark Metrick. He was a good CEO. He's with the company for a long time. So I don't mean to, say that they did everything wrong, but there were
Right.
some things that, maybe in hindsight they shouldn't have done. But on top of a lot of other things, luxury has been soft for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
The high end buyer is still buying luxury, but it was softness in the aspirational luxury buyer. And there have been a lot of, people turning away from department stores. People are going to e-commerce. A lot of the luxury brands that Saks was famous for opened up their own flagship stores. And even when they sold at Saks, they leased the space instead of selling it through Saks. So the industry has been transformed. And I think there are ways to win as a luxury department store, and I'm still very optimistic and hopeful about Saks, but it's been a tough time.
The element of luxury and e-commerce, are those two working together right now? Is it, fairly synergistic, or is it a little bit more of a challenge? Because I'm wondering if people think about e-commerce more along the lines of everything, maybe almost but luxury in some instances.
Now, I think luxury does need the physical experience more than anything else, because a lot of what you're selling in luxury, especially to the very high end consumer, is the whole experience, which by the way is kind
Yeah.
of why I thought separating out the online and physical store wasn't such a great move. I thought that there was something to be there because you want your relationship with these very high spenders to be one-on-one, and you want to be able to offer them whatever they want where they want it.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of a miss. Uh, But I do think luxury is something that when it's done right, your in-store experience, that in-store one-on-one personalized, customized relationship matters a lot.
So as the bankruptcy was getting ready to take hold, there seemed to be issues of the financing coming forward and entities within that wondering whether or not this company had kind of the structure to reorganize and to rebuild. Do they? And I guess the other question is the former Neiman CEO is coming on to run
Right.
this operation. Is he the guy? Can he be the guy to, to get this right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, going into bankruptcy chapter 11 helps with this whole debt situation
Yeah.
because that's part of the reason they do it. And ex CEO of Neiman, who's now taking over, as you noted, was the one who led Neiman out of bankruptcy. And I think he did a good job. I've heard, I don't know him personally, but I've heard him speak in podcasts and things like that. And he's pretty impressive, I think. So I personally think that was a very good choice.
How then does he go about that? And because the brand of Saks and of Neiman and of Bergdorf are just so legendary within the retail sector.
Well, I think the model to look at is some of the amazing department stores in Europe. So some of those department stores are doing a really wonderful job. And I think it would be a model that Saks could think about copying. So like some of the, like Le Bon Marché in Paris, it really caters to the very high ultra net worth person. And they have wonderful in-store experiences and one-on-one relationships. They position their store as a place you might want to spend your whole day.
Right.
They have beautiful restaurants. They have suites upstairs where they cater to exactly what you need. It's just very, very high end. And then the other thing that's amazing about some of those department stores in Europe is that they're just beautiful palaces that attract tourists. So a lot of tourists, even people who would go to Paris, one of the sites they might want to see
Yeah.
is Galerie Lafayette or Le Printemps. They're just amazing, amazing department stores
Right.
that attract a lot of tourists, which are they don't spend a lot, but a lot of them spending a little bit brings in revenue. And then at the high end, if they have very, very deep relationships with people who are very loyal and very wealthy, I think that model together works. And I don't think Saks has been doing a great job on either end of those, but maybe in the future they can.
So does that model then work here in the United States?
I think it can. Like, I think New York City is certainly a tourist place, and
Sure.
the flagship store can be amazing. And so they can attract the tourist business. Saks, it's interesting because it's right across the street from Rockefeller Center, in Christmas time. And 2 years ago, they stopped the Christmas lights, which
Yeah.
everybody was so miserable about, but that's a tourist play. That brings people to Saks. It's a place that people want to go to. And then there they are at Rockefeller Center looking at the tree. And, last year there was no lights. Now they did bring them back this year, but that's what I mean about like little missteps that probably didn't play well. And maybe these things will be corrected now.
And then when you have several missteps put together, they all add up to a bigger misstep.
Yeah. And I know Neiman because like I said, I saw some of the stuff when they were coming out of bankruptcy. We're talking about like 90% of their revenues came from 10% of their ultra, ultra wealthy,
Yeah.
um, customers. And I think that was even more so for Neiman than for Saks, but that might be a model that will help bring Saks up if they can develop those relationships. I don't know if it's too little, too late, or if those relationships really can be developed and help bring it back to profitability.
Can those stores or do they try to then connect more with the high ultra net worth individual, but at the same time, still try and get a segment of the general public as a component of their bottom line as well?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you make it a very experiential, beautiful store, you can
Yeah.
bring in the tourists, you can bring in people who go into New York City for, I'm just thinking of the New York one, but they do have a couple other flagships. But in particular, that New York store is really an amazing place. And, the problem with luxury recently is the aspirational shopper. That's where it's been weak.
Right.
But I think if you go at this tourist level and then go at the upper level, that's been stronger. The travel has been better recently, and they may be able to win on those 2 pieces, I don't know.
Barbara, great to talk to you as always. Thanks very much.
Sure, thank you.
You got it. Barbara Kahn, marketing professor here at the Wharton School and co host of the Marketing Matters podcast on the Wharton Podcast Network.